Hello and welcome to a new project for the channel, a 1986 Range Rover, which is in need of some restoration that we'll be getting to later in the video, but for now there is something missing. And in fact, there's quite a lot missing. There's no engine, there's no gearbox, there isn't even a radiator or any of those ancillaries. Although thankfully there is the bonnet light still attached that I'll be able to wire back up. It does show how much faith Land Rover had in their own engines and vehicles by having a light under the bonnet. So with the engine bay being pretty sparse, what is the plan for this project? What engine do I actually want to put in it? Well, my ultimate goal with this, which I'm pretty sure is different to most, is to make a diesel electric hybrid out of it. So if we zoom into my low effort diagram here, so up front, there'll be a diesel engine to act as a generator engine, probably around 2 to 2.5 litres in size. Then attached onto that will be a big alternator, pretty much in the place of where the torque converter or clutch would be. Current estimates put the generator needing to be around 30 kilowatts, might end up being a little bit higher, but we'll see further down the line. Onto that will then be an electric motor that drives straight into a transfer box, which then distributes drive out through the prop shafts. This electric motor will be powered by both the generator and a small amount of lithium batteries, ideally LFP batteries because they don't set on fire the same, which is obviously preferable on, frankly, a bit of a DIY project. The intention for these batteries is to be able to give them, say, 10 or 20 miles range just on their own, which for me would cover most journeys that I'm actually likely to do. These batteries can also be used to fill in power gaps that the generator might not be able to produce. If, say, you try to accelerate all of a sudden very quickly, the generator might not be able to create that power immediately. So the batteries act as a nice fill-in for that. This, of course, isn't anything new. This is diesel electric submarine technology from basically 100 years ago. You've also got companies now like Edison Motors doing this setup with HGVs, as well as I think the Dodge Ram Charger. The main reason I want to do this, really, to be honest, is as a technical exercise and as a learning exercise. So I do actually want to build the generator, the electric motor, and the power system setup all by myself for this, pretty much from scratch. I want to try to limit the amount that I'm buying in. I also would like to try and work out how I can build these things in the UK without having to import things. This might seem like an unrealistic thing to be able to achieve. It might seem like a big challenge, but I actually don't think this part here is the problem, is the challenge in this. I think it's actually the auxiliary parts that are required for this, which we'll zoom on over to this list. So hopefully you can read my writing here, but I'll be explaining them anyway, of course. So the auxiliary requirements to get all of this system to work, to get this hybrid system to work. The power steering pump, this vehicle is on a steering box, isn't even on a steering rack. So I'd either have to find an electric steering rack that's re-engineered and can be fitted onto this, or I need an electric steering pump. As for the master cylinder for the brakes, the servo, of course, runs off a vacuum system, so there needs to be some support for that, whether it's an electrical conversion or a vacuum pump in itself. And then again, if you're running this without the generator, you do need some form of cab heater system, so some electric conversion for that as well. These vehicles at some years did have aircon. I don't know if this did, but it'd be cool to fit it. And again, you'd have to have an electric aircon pump. And then getting the clocks all to work when you turn the engine on and off, that's another thing entirely. Not to mention the normal problems you have with any engine swap on a vehicle, which is getting any electronics to work with the new engine. So in this case, if I'm going to fit a slightly newer engine, there's going to be ECUs involved, so I might have to have standalone ECUs, etc. Same goes for the speedo, same goes for the rev counter. And then any warnings, whether that's, say, simple things like oil pressure warnings or something a bit more complicated, all of those things need to work in the vehicle. And as you can probably see now, these to me are the complications that make the diesel electric setup actually hard to do, not necessarily the alternator and motor, which for the most part is a lot of just winding copper wire around different things. Now, as I've sat here looking at this vehicle thinking what is the best way to get this done, it's kind of made me think of the development of my own robotic actuators for the other project on the channel being a powered suit of armour. And the difficulties I've had with this, mainly because I've had nothing that worked to start with. So this has been delayed, it's took a while, it takes a lot to just trial anything because I've not had a motor controller that worked, I've not had power systems that work, I haven't had gearboxes that work, so I've had to do everything all at once, which has delayed this and made this way harder than it perhaps needed to be. So my plan to get around this issue is the following. I'm going to buy a clapped out 2.5 litre diesel P38 Range Rover as a donor car. That way I can fit that BMW 6-cylinder engine into this, which, as you can see, there should be enough room for. I can also use all of the ancillary parts that I obviously haven't got, things like radiators, pipes, all of that. I should be able to modify those and get them all into this. I'll then be able to get that engine working in this vehicle, get all of the electronics working. I'll also be able to drive the vehicle and actually test it, because to start with, I'll just put the original gearbox that's in this P38 Range Rover's transfer box, all of it. I'll put all of it into this so the vehicle can be driven, tested, make sure everything works, make sure that when I do the testing for the diesel electric system, I won't have any exterior problems. Not only that, that could actually allow me to just buy another 2.5 litre diesel engine, the BMW engine, and basically build the diesel electric setup on a stand, make sure it works on a stand before I even have to throw it into this vehicle. That way all of these problems can be solved in an orderly, logical manner, which will be a nice change. So now I've gone through the plan, let's go over what restoration needs to be done on this, particularly rust-wise. Ooh. And before I forget, there was something else I want to add into the plan. As I'm developing my own composite armour for the other project on the channel, being the powered suit of armour, I feel like I really ought to be adding some armour to this thing underneath the panels in keeping with the channel, especially as there is some work to do under the panels. For a 39-year-old vehicle, I really don't think it's in that bad a condition, really. There is, of course, the odd bit of rust here and there, even at the front. It kind of does get worse towards the back. We'll get to that soon. I do actually think it looks pretty good in the white colour, especially with the steel black wheels on it. That should clean up pretty well with the all-terrains on it. And then if we take a look inside, you can see how it is a typical field find vehicle, where someone has started to strip it to work on it and then realised they couldn't be bothered and just threw it all inside the cab. Cobwebs and everything. We do appear to have a few pieces of the dashboard missing, some random pieces. Whether it is all underneath this mess, I have absolutely no idea, but we're going to find out. Of course, got the typical sagging roof lining, but you know, no roof lining at the back, but never mind. This was once upon a time the 3.9 manual, but as you can see, there's nothing really under there. I have to say though, I do kind of like this simplistic interior design in general. Probably wasn't simplistic in the 1980s. But I feel like it's a breath of fresh air compared to some vehicles now. I like how simple the clocks are in the middle here, how basic it is, but it's all actually pretty readable. I like how for the time you've got an actual clock sitting in the centre here, and I really like the fact we don't have no nonsense dual climate control, fancy switches and massive amount of buttons just to operate aircon. You've just got a few basic knobs and switches to move everything across. Which, let's be honest, when you get in a car with a jumper on and you're too hot and you need to turn everything down, that's all you really want. We are, of course, missing a radio, but I am thinking I can 3D print a holder or something to sit on here nicely. I wouldn't want any obtusely large screen, of course, but something to plug a phone into at least. I was also quite surprised to find on a 1986 vehicle that we'd have electric windows. I was expecting the old get fit windows to be on it, but turns out not. I have absolutely no idea what that button once did, and there appears to have been some form of mobiliser fitted to this. Kind of surprised you'd even bother, but whatever. Something that is surprisingly really great on these things is the visibility. You've got these big windows that are also low set, so as your arm sits on the side here, you've got absolutely great view down to the sides, all to the top. There's basically no blind spots throughout this entire thing. Of course, being an old Land Rover, despite the fact it is quite large, they still couldn't manage to line the steering wheel up with the driver's seat. So if I place the camera in the middle of the driver's seat, the camera sits around here. And yet, even still, they've somehow managed to get the pedals further to the right than the seat is, even though the steering wheel is further to the left. Understandable in a narrowed up Land Rover Defender, but in this, I do not have a clue how they managed to do that badly. Now, if we step on out, this is, to be honest, the first proper time I've looked around this vehicle since picking it up. These bolts, I have absolutely no idea what they do. I picked it up in the rain, so I was more eager to get it loaded up and taken away than to actually ask what all these were for. The seat's in pretty good nick. Again, for like a 39-year-old vehicle, it's pretty good. There's not actually that much wear on it. However, this is where the bigger requirements for welding do start. So as you can see, we do have some sill issues down here. Whether I plate this up or just buy another sill, because apparently you can buy them, I haven't decided yet because I can't decide how absolutely terrible it is. The door's not too bad. We do have a little bit of rust here, but I can't tell if that's actually rusted through or if it's just been damaged. But anyway, I don't class that as the end of the world. And this is where the rust worsens a little bit. If we go in here with my trusty tapping hammer, you can see it's definitely something to do there. We can't get into this door quite at the minute because it's had to be tied shut. We can just see that cord through the inside because we also have some rust down here. The pluses with these cars, they're built like Lego cars, so it's all flat panels, so it shouldn't be too bad to actually repair. It's not like there's some complicated monocoque, three-dimensional curves that I'll have to go over. It's basically just flat panels. And rotate onto the back. I did also have to undo this fantastic bolt on the inside that's holding this shut, so I don't know what's... Oh dear, no. No. So we apparently only have one hinge holding this on. So I do have some rot up here, hopefully you'll be able to see, although it feels quite strong underneath the surface rust, so hopefully that's not too bad and can be repaired. A bit worse there maybe. Can't tell if it's just this top portion here or what's underneath. I do feel like I'm going to have to pull the plastic pillars off the sides in a future video to see if there's much rot under that as well. The predicament now is how do I hold this open so I can get into the boot. Right, I managed to gingerly tie this up. Hopefully it won't drop on my head. Now, does the boot lid actually open or is that going to fall off onto my toes? We do have one of the wings. Actually looks in pretty good condition, so that's a plus. We've got the floor here, if I can get it out. We've got a bumper. Actually, it doesn't look too bad, it looks like it'll clean up. So if we're going to handheld mode, you can see the tailgate is pretty much done for really. And then of course, there's some rot around these corners, this side being the worst. But again, the plus point with these things, it's all just like flat metal, apart from the wheel arches, but the wheel arches actually don't look too bad. So it's like we've just got to put the flat metal around them. And then as you can tell by the colour, there is also some corrosion around here, which if we go over to the door, which I have just got open, again, corrosion here. Something that seems to be evident is I have no idea what colour this one started out at. I thought it started out as white, but I'm starting to think it might have been something different. It's like all of the corrosion starts basically here on this vehicle, because forward it doesn't seem too bad, but then when you're looking at here, this is obviously a decent amount to plate. The only chassis corrosion that I've found so far is this cross member down here. That is probably going to be the biggest pain in the ass, to be honest. There is some corrosion on that spring mount there, but it is on top, so I'm hoping it's not too hard to do. Of course, I won't know until I've properly cleaned it all off. Now we've seen the top side of the disaster zone, let's take a look underneath. So we'll start this horrific back end, and it's never a good thing when you can see the roof through the bottom of the car. But it's just a continuation of that rust, and I'm also pretty sure that fuel tank leaks by the look of it. But on the plus side, it does seem to improve the further forward we go. I do actually think in a past life it was reasonably well looked after, because it seemed to have had a lot of underseal that's obviously peeling off now. But it does mean that this cross member isn't actually that badly corroded on this side, it's just on the top where it obviously couldn't be resealed. You've of course got this sill that we saw earlier, which again I think you can buy the sill, so I'll just probably fit a new sill to that, especially now I look at it underneath. But that is where it all starts to improve and actually get a bit better, and this is why I bought it, because I did obviously see all of the stuff on the back and in the back, but when I got underneath it to just have a little bit of a browse, it didn't really seem that bad for an old bus. All of this chassis feels pretty solid, barely any real corrosion on it. Again, it seems to have been well undersealed in its past life. I do know that one of these brake pipes is bust because I didn't have any brakes taken off the trailer, which, we're bearing in mind I live on a hill, was pretty interesting. But now we're back under the front, we'll go up to the top and take a look under the bonnet. Now I have had this open already and I can tell you it's stiff. So as you can see, there's not really a great deal in here. However, there is some random wires here. I believe these are because when this did recently have an engine, it had a Perkins diesel engine in. It did have a 3.9 manual and it was new. And now I'm wondering, is all this connecting to that red button, and did they fit that red button as a starter button for the Perkins engine for some reason? Under here though, it's really not too bad. There isn't really that much rust here, a bit of surface rust, some random missing panels, or at least I think they're missing panels. But again, the chassis at the front here isn't too bad. It shouldn't really take much cleaning up. So what is the next and the first things to do? So after looking over this thing, particularly after looking over that back end, I think what I really need to do is get some grinding discs, get some wire wheels, and start cleaning it up and see what's actually to do from a structural point of view. I think I'll then paint all those things either white or a primer grey so it makes it a bit brighter. So hopefully you guys can see it a bit better on the camera, because if I paint it all black, you'll see about as much as Stevie Wonder would. But once it's all cleaned up and we really know what's what, if I end up getting a P38 donor in the meantime and I get bored of doing the welding, I can obviously do some work on actually swapping all the bits over, making brackets for the radiators and everything to fit properly, and moving the project along that way. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe. I'm also making suits of power armour on the channel, so if that's something of interest to you, please hang around. There's a playlist up there somewhere. With that said, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.